Leaving that heartless home, I wandered the streets alone for a long time before finally finding a hotel to stay in. Lying on the bed, I stared at the 9-figure balance in my bank account, lost in thought. I used to believe I lived in a very happy family. My father patiently comforted and advised me when I faced difficulties at work. My mother would bring my favorite meal to my office when I worked late. My sister would come to pick me up from work when it rained. I felt like the cherished little prince of the family. I was always puzzled whenever I saw stories online about parents favoring daughters over sons. How could such families exist? How could parents not love their sons? But now, I finally grasped that awful feeling of helplessness and disappointment. I realized I had always been part of such a family. All the love I had felt was conditional, based on my usefulness. To them, I was more like an investment. Their love was the cost, and my money was the return. So, the gifts of fate had always come with a hidden price. When I could make money and ensure a comfortable life for everyone, they smiled warmly at me. But now, they saw me as an ex-convict who couldn't find a job, with no money and no value. Their love had vanished completely. Little did they know, this ex-con had $100 million in his account. I couldn't help but feel a bit excited, wondering how they'd react when the son they despised most stood at the pinnacle of success one day. The next day, I arrived at a hotel in the city center. This wasn't just any hotel. It was a top-notch, sprawling establishment that catered to dining, lodging, banquets, and even business activities. It had 8 floors and occupied an entire building. The location, surroundings, and foot traffic were all excellent. Before I went to prison, I worked as a hotel lobby manager. Naturally, I wanted to return to my old profession. Only this time, not as a manager but as the owner. I negotiated with the hotel's owner for several hours and eventually bought the hotel from her. I took over management that very day. From then on, I lived and ate at the hotel, seizing every moment to learn and develop new management and operational strategies. Under my leadership, the hotel's business flourished, becoming so popular that it was almost impossible to get a reservation. I soon became a bona fide wealthy man in the city. One evening, 6 months later, while inspecting the dining department, I overheard Joanna in a private room. This hotel is so popular. I had to book my daughter's 1-month celebration 2 months in advance just to get a table. I've heard that only the creme de la creme get to dine here. Joanna, you made it, bringing us to such a lavish place. I froze in place and realized Joanna had brought our parents and a bunch of relatives to this private room for her newborn daughter's 1-month celebration. Melanie was busy showing off by recording videos on her phone. My face appeared in the frame when her camera panned to the door. Jonathan? What are you doing here? Melanie put down her phone and frowned at me. Upon hearing this, everyone in the room turned their gaze toward me, standing at the doorway. Jonathan, have you no shame? You knew we were having a banquet here today and followed us just to scrounge a meal? Seamus rushed over and scolded me as if I were the plague. Who said I was here to scrounge for food? I replied calmly, what are you here for if you're not here to scrounge? Begging? This is a high-end place reserved for the wealthy. If you're hungry, go dig through the trash outside. That's where you belong, she said, crossing her arms and looking at me with utter disdain. The other relatives also frowned and glared at me, their expressions filled with disgust as if I were an annoying fly. Joanna spoke up, too, clearly unhappy. Jonathan, when you said you wanted to cut ties with us, I thought you had some backbone. But now, you've stooped to follow us for a free meal. It's really disgusting. Before I could respond, James chimed in, Jonathan, I taught you from a young age to be self-reliant and have some backbone. Have you forgotten? How could you throw away your dignity for a meal? I looked at them and sneered, it's just a meal. It doesn't matter to me. You're really something, aren't you? Sour grapes, as if you, a penniless ex-con, could ever afford a meal here even if you worked your whole life, Seamus sneered.